This presentation is titled Testing Workflows with Gherkin Specifications. My name is Anton Antonov and today is February 26th, 2023. Gherkin is the language of the Cucumber framework, which is used to do behavior-driven development. Gherkin is used for non-technical and human-readable definitions of test cases. Gherkin means some sort of little cucumber, and apparently there is a building in London called the Gherkin. So some familiarity with the Gherkin language is assumed, but even if you haven't seen Gherkin or heard about Gherkin before, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This is by design. So here, this is Comma, which is based on the integrated development environment IntelliJ. So IntelliJ has a Cucumber plugin or Gherkin plugin. So you can see the keywords are in blue: feature, scenario, when, then, and so forth. So it's pretty straightforward. I'm not going to explain too much about Gherkin itself, though. I'm going to use the Raku package datetime grammar, which you can see, here how it works in action. Choosing a package which is interesting enough but also simple enough to do the examples was somewhat of a challenge. So these are the steps we're going to go through. We're going to write tests in Gherkin in some feature file. Then we're going to generate some test code template, and we are going to fill in with some sort of glue code what this template for tests. We're using the Gherkin grammar package to generate the code and putting them in some test file. Then we execute the tests. So this is somewhat different from the standard Cucumber workflows, which automate a little bit more what is being done. For example, here you can see in the IntelliJ I'm supposed to do this, press this running, but there's nothing associated with this code, so that's why nothing was happening. So to some extent, this is the reason I'm making this video. So first of all, instead of trying to hook up the code in some bigger framework, and it seems to me it's better if we just generate the testing code, and then without using Gherkin or Cucumber anymore, we just use this testing code. Nevertheless, we still have this association with the simple code, simple initial human readable test specifications and the actual executable code. Again, the approach is somewhat minimalistic. Typical Cucumber workflows, they automate much more. There's much more kind of work under the hood. All right, so I'm going to go through this first simple example. So pretty simple. I'm going to spell out what's going on. So all feature files, all Gherkin specifications, they start with feature, the keyword feature, and so we have feature, datetime interpretation test, scenario, ISO date, when 2032-10-01, then the result is date time, and the year is 2032, month is 10, and date is 1. Okay, I'm going to generate the code for this. So here, I'm just using the command line from this Gherkin grammar package, and so the generated code is here. I'm going to split this editor windows and push it down so we can compare. And so let's see, let me zoom out here. So there are some definitions here for the different functions which are involved into the Gherkin framework, and let me put this package which we're going to test. So since we used when and then, and if we say and, this is basically a synonym of then, if it's after then. So you can see I have defined the corresponding functions, And so in this first example, we have definitions for when and then with some overloading. So this function example here, right, which corresponds to the scenario, I could have used the keyword example instead of scenario, right? But I'm going to continue using scenario. So here we execute the functions here which correspond to these strings which are given in the specifications. So our glue code, if I go back to this diagram here, the glue code which I'm talking about here is actually providing some way to interpret the strings which are given to these functions. So we're using function overloading. I'm going to be using also closures. So here I'm going to define a state variable result, and so I'm going to assign my result to be datetime interpret of the command. And here this is actually, we need more general definition. I mean, we can use it for some other for some of the other scenarios we are going to write later on. And so here the result is date time. Well, since we have the state variable, we are going to check, is it this? And here this function corresponds to this string in which we say the year is 2032 and so forth. The parameters are in quotes, and so it makes it easier for parsing and extracting of parameters. I'm not going to write it down. I'm going to copy and paste something I have previously written here. So you can see with this match, with this regular expression, we extract the parameters which are in quotes and then we verify them. Now in this particular case, and I can unsplit at this point, since I'm executing the result is date time, then the result is date time before executing this verification of the year and the month and the day. I don't need to check that this object result is date time. So basically we have something like this, and then the package Gherkin grammar generated this testing line. So we're using the test framework of Raku. So I can execute the whole thing, and yeah, all tests say passing. All right. So basically this is, we went through all of these elements here in this diagram. We started with some simple Gherkin feature file. We generated the test code template using the command line. Gherkin interpret is actually a function which can be used inside Raku sessions. Then we provided the glue code and the test file, and then we executed the tests. All right, so the next example is just using multiple scenarios, and again, I'm not going to kind of write them down. I'm going to copy and paste them, and then we're going to see what the results would be. So here, all right, so we start again with scenarios. We can see we have more scenarios for full date, for full-blown date. It is obvious that in some situations it might be tedious to spell out all of the scenarios. So instead of having separate scenario blocks, we can have one scenario outline or scenario template, and with a table specification. And you can see that the commands here, when, then, they do use certain parameters which are also column names in this table here. So I mean, if I rename this, right, this is this plugin IntelliJ gives me a hint that something is incomplete here. And so this scenario outline is called template with table spec. When the argument is spec, then the integration is result. It should be pretty clear. And then this table specifies the different strings which are going to be used to be tested against this code. All right, so I'm going to again to generate the actual test code. So here Well, I mean, I generated the code, and you can see this table here. Let me kind of put it in a separate kind of 3 lines. So the table has been parsed, and it is given as a second argument to this function scenario template, and then there is a loop which goes through these records. Basically, the table is an array of hashes, and each record is a hash. I could have used subtests. Well, I didn't. Again, I'm going to copy and paste the code I have prepared before. So, and I'm going to run it. This should correspond to what to the specifications we had earlier. So you can see again I'm using datetime interpret here with the key spec which comes from the record, because in this table this is how it is specified, and then I'm using eval to verify the result, because the results were given as strings, which is those strings are Raku code. So in order to convince myself that I'm actually going through this code, let me print out the record. And so also here, and let me run the test again, and we can see we get some results which correspond to this printouts. All right, so we can declare success and victory with our tests. It looks like datetime is working just fine. I mean, I don't think I need to summarize again what was going on, but we went through all of these steps, right? We started with a feature file, generated the test file, filled it in, and then executed the tests. So this was it. Thank you for your attention.